Welcome back to the podcast today with me, Johnny Pardo. Today I welcome Dr. Moshe to the show, and we're going to be talking about the power of holistic counseling today. So Dr. Moshe Daniel Block is a naturopathic doctor, author and innovator in mind-body medicine who graduated from the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine in 2000. He created and teaches the Vis Dialogue, a transformative mind-body healing technique that has helped thousands achieve life-changing results, and offers a full certification program in holistic counseling. So, welcome to the show today. Glad to have you on. So,
Thanks.
first of all, it'd be really interesting to hear what the Vis Dialogue is, if you can kind of give us a little bit of an understanding.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast with you, Johnny. Thank you. So the V's Dialogue is, I published a book titled Holistic Counseling, Introducing the V's
Mm,
Dialogue. It's mind-body medicine meets psychology.
mm,
And there's a special principle in the V's Dialogue. The idea being that the truth lives in the patient, in the client. And the practitioner doesn't offer advice or doesn't offer expert points of training. However, the practitioner's role is to ask the patient questions, to get them to reflect deeper and deeper, starting from their point of suffering as the launch off point for the dialogue. So the suffering could be physical, chronic illness, mental, emotional, even spiritual. So by asking questions, the patient reflects deeper and deeper to get to this understanding of what is underlying their suffering that is residing in the subconscious mind as a form of hidden and lurking false belief system. So the V's Dialogue is the method to excavate and to help a person witness with their own conscious mind what
mm,
they're thinking in their subconscious that is a false form of thinking, belief, and choice making. And it's so effective because it uses these principles that the truth lives in the patient. I think that's a very important principle. I think it's
mm,
actually true. And that the advice doesn't really come from the practitioner, because when we rely on the practitioner for advice, a number of things could happen. One, the practitioner could be wrong. It's
mm,
not unheard of that the psychologist or the counselor is misleading a person offering advice. Or two, we deny the person from witnessing it for themselves. They're hearing it from the outside. They're either going to doubt it or not be sure of it, or they'll take the person's word for it, which is externalizing themselves to that other party, and that's diminishing of their own power and their own connection with their true self. So the model works very well to help people profoundly make these profound changes.
mm. Okay, so yeah, just like really allowing them to connect to sort of like their their true self or what's going on underneath, rather than like this is like a one size fits all kind of approach. It's relevant to the
Yeah.
individual a lot more, that kind of approach.
Exactly. And like I have myself been to psychologists and counselors, and you get some advice, and some of the advice is quite good. And I told
Mm.
you the problems of getting good advice. There's also getting bad advice, which I've also gotten. And also you'll get a sort of a snippet of information like, oh yeah, you're suffering from this archetype, and therefore this is how you might want to think of it. This is how a good way to think of it. And again, like those snippets are a one size fits all. It doesn't go deep enough to get to the individual expression of the problem.
Mm. Got you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So kind of touching on like holistic counseling,
yeah.
and what this is. What's holistic counseling, and how's that like different from, traditional counseling or therapy for you?
Well, that this is perhaps a little bit confusing, but holistic counseling is sort of the umbrella canopy title of the V's dialogue.
Okay.
So the two are the one and the same. They're
Right.
basically the same medicine. The word holistic counseling just indicates this word holistic, And the vis dialogue is the specific name of the dialogue. The word vis comes from the Latin phrase in naturopathic medicine, vis medicatrix naturae, which means the healing power of nature. And the word holistic is very relevant. It's often, it's used um, presently today by for lots of different reasons. It's, I would say, misused, like holistic toothpaste or something, the holistic toothpaste company. Whereas what I consider holistic is an integration, an understanding that the body, mind, and emotion are actually one. The body is a reflection of the mind. That when the body has a chronic problem, a chronic illness,
Mm,
that there's something going on in the mental emotional field that is underlying that problem, and the body is an expression of that.
mm,
So that's the way I use the word holistic is a form the way I consider it to be like a true form of holism. Because some people say, yeah, I'm holistic. I offer nutrition and I do counseling for somebody. And if they have a problem with their knee, well, I'll give them Russ Tox homeopathic remedy, or I'll give them like natural anti-inflammatories, and then it's very piecemeally, this
mm,
for that, rather than saying, okay, well, what's going on with the knee? Why is there inflammation there? Why is a person having constipation or insomnia or chronic migraines? All of these things can be traced to a root cause. And in this medicine, in the holistic model, the root cause is the mind. That
mm,
is the mind's a misalignment or making a choice about a truth, which is not true for the person. Because the mind is so fundamental in our existence, it trickles down and has an influence on the emotion. And that will trickle down and have an influence on the vital energy of the body. And that will influence the flow of blood. And that will influence the body's health. So
mm,
this is the cascade of hierarchy of the holistic model.
mm. Okay, yeah, seeing how they're all sort of like into sort of like interlinked, and again, it's coming back specifically for the individual. Um, yeah, and
That's right.
I reflect on what you relate to. I mean, to what you were saying a little bit on like maybe got some symptoms, and it's like inflammatory. I think you were talking about there some sort of like tablets, and yeah, it may be
Yeah.
linked to other parts in the body. So you're kind of looking all the mind and coming from the mind, and it's actually being a cause and something. So it's like looking at all those parts together. Sounds like this approach.
Yeah, exactly. It's well synthesized. I see that, there are many different approaches. Most medical approaches on the planet today are material based, meaning you have a problem. Well, we'll give you something that addresses the problem, but it's superficial. It doesn't go very deep. So, the modern functional medicine approach is a more evolved form of like the conventional medical approach, where we're looking at, deeper things rather than just the suppression of symptoms. We're looking at digestion and how your gut flora is, and we're looking at your blood markers and your nutritional content of your blood, and we're addressing those things and not just the symptoms of disease. But all of that is still at the level of the material of the
Mm,
physical body. And the physical body is one of the vessels that we as human beings live in. And I say we as we're living in these vessels because in my opinion, we are not the vessels that we live in. They're temporary vehicles to experience life in. And the physical body is the most distant from our true nature. The mind is closer, much closer to the true nature because it's a very subtle form, involves the use of intention and will. And it is a very high, like it has a high influence on the vessels that we inhabit. And that's why I've chosen to address and to help people address their chronic issues at the level of the mind, because a small ripple from there can have a huge impact. A small change in the mind. It doesn't mean it's an easy change.
mm,
Like when we have these habitual patterns of belief, especially false belief, these can be challenging because of their familiar and habitual. But to change a small way of thinking about something has a massive impact on the rest of the organism that we live in. And versus like I kind of see it as shoving around boulders when we work at the material, because we're trying to move physical matter with physical matter, and it's kind of a crude and superficial way of addressing illness.
Mm. It's certainly, the body can be a very complicated thing. So yeah,
Yes.
I like what you're touching on a little bit with the mind being closer to um, what we're actually, maybe what we actually are, and also the body being very much kind of just like showing up, like physically giving us some signs as well.
Yeah, that's right.
In very much.
The signs of illness are actually a message that something is wrong.
Mm.
And where it's
In the
wrong
mind.
is in the body. Sorry, the
Okay.
body having symptoms, that's a sign that something is wrong. It's a
Mm.
message that for us to explore, well, what is the message here? You know, for the vast majority of chronic illness, it comes from mind. There are some exceptions to that. For one example would be extreme toxicity. Like if you've been exposed to extreme heavy metal
Mm.
content in your blood, then you can manifest a physical disease from that, which can become chronic, and you just have to kind of address it by detoxifying the metals. And certainly we live in a very toxic environment, but the predominant cause of chronic illness, in my experience, working with patients now for 25 years, is their thoughts,
Mm.
right? And different factors can make those physical symptoms worse, like poor nutrition, not very good rest, not getting good air and water. These are key factors in the ebbing and flow of our health. But the core issue remains in the mind. And I see it as an opportunity for spiritual growth, because I consider us, this is not unique to my way of thinking. It is seen in lots of different cosmologies, in yoga and Taoism, even naturopathic medicine. Who we truly are is soul. And the statement of the soul is universal. It's I am. It's pure beingness. And it is actually unconditionally okay. Who we are is unconditionally okay. We get into trouble in life and we start to think that in order for me to be happy, for me to be okay, I need attention, I need love, I need to be heard, I need to be respected. We can get attached to any of these things. And as children, it's true, you need love, you need attention and everything. But as we age, we're still holding on as a child to what we didn't get. Like, I didn't get enough attention. I need this attention. So as adults, we're seeking attention as the means of being okay within ourselves. But that actually makes us conditionally attached. In other words, the belief system is I am not okay unless I have attention. So we live our life around having attention, creating attention. Maybe that means like getting a beautiful body, or like perfect hair, like working on
Mm.
ourselves physically, or fancy car, lots of money, fancy clothes, something to get attention. And there's a constant judge going on underneath the surface saying, am I getting attention? No, no, this is not okay. I'm not feeling good. I'm uptight. I'm not breathing well. My muscles are tense. My stomach acid isn't producing and digesting food very well. I'm getting constipated. And all the subsequent results of chronic physical illness comes from this one conditional belief about who we are.
Mm.
That I need that thing in order to be okay. And that's what I help people understand is like, what are you choosing to believe conditionally about yourself? When you understand that, it liberates so much energy, time, effort, and suffering, because you return to this space where it's like, well, attention is nice, but I am okay without it. Therefore, I will not try to control my reality to get what I think I need to be okay. So much healing comes from letting go of those conditionalities on our being.
Mm. So with the with the coming from the mind again, we've spoken a lot about beliefs, which I'm really intrigued to go into because I know
Sure.
beliefs have held me back, and I know lots of people just sometimes when you're outside the box, or someone's saying it to you, you can kind of hear some of their patterns when it's not you, and those kind of things. With beliefs, would you say beliefs, in your experience of all the work you've done, are like one of the strongest factors in that come from the mind, or are there other things that come from the mind as well that play a big role in how we're feeling?
Yes, beliefs are choices.
Mm,
It's the most important factor for negative consequences, for unhealth.
mm,
The mind, however, its most powerful asset is to also be able to align with what is. And then it's a passive observer. It's just observing the nature of reality, like a still lake reflects the nature of the sky and the trees around it. So the mind can be still and observe reality passively and at peace, or it could be actively thinking and calculating and making choices and acting on those choices. And so, yes, the most important factor for our health is the belief system.
mm,
And I would make a point here because I think some people get confused about that they have to choose to believe who they want to be. And there's a half truth there in the sense that if you're letting go of an old belief, let's say your belief is I'm not good enough, or I'm nothing without money, right?
mm,
Or nobody likes me in this world. I'm all alone in the world. These are different beliefs that people have.
mm,
If I choose to believe that, then I'm going to be you know, holding on to that reality, and basically I've created that reality from some kind of wounding. It's actually not true. So the mind is actively creating something which isn't true versus the mind being still and not creating its beliefs, but just observing what is. We don't, like, in my opinion, we don't need to create beliefs about who we are unless they're for specific roles. Like, hey, I'm a father, I'm a good father. I'm an attentive father. I do these things. Or I'm a teacher and I really care about my students and this is what I am. Like, the more we use the mind, the less at peace we are, basically. The more exhausting it is. The brain, the brain is the
mm.
organ of the mind, the physical organ of the mind, and it uses up a lot of glucose to operate. The more we're like, and in that monkey mind, that brain activity, the more we are exhausting ourselves, really. We're eating up a lot of energy.
So maybe I'm just trying to understand that a little bit because it's fascinating. So is it about sometimes we use the mind, we're using that mind too much sometimes, and it's
Yes.
just maybe using it more for observing purposes?
Yes. Yes. I mean, from your day to day, like I don't know, you want to make a sandwich.
Mm,
You're using the mind, but it's kind of an effortless process. You're not going,
mm,
man, is it rye bread today or is it spelt? And you're like, well, spelt is like it's high in calories and it's got a little bit of gluten in there. And rye bread is like, you know what I mean? Like there's certain activities, the mind is always involved. But when we start grinding around choices, then we really get exhausted. So it's really, we want them to allow the mind to just do its thing in a very calm and peaceful fashion. We're always using the mind.
yeah.
I mean, unless you're in deep meditation, your eyes are rolled back and you're like, you're jonesing with the universe. Um, but the mind is always happening. So you don't want to have that. I call it the extra soundtrack. So you're climbing a mountain, right? And it's an ordeal. But human beings could do things like that. We're capable. We could meet the challenges in our life. The problem arises when you start to create the second soundtrack or creating stories in your head. You say, oh, well, what if I run out of water and I get really thirsty and then I pass out on, and then the wolves eat my body. And then you're not present anymore on the path. You're in your head. You're not enjoying the smell of the air, right? And you're tripping on roots and twisting your ankle. And so it's like when we go through our lives, we have challenges. I don't know if anybody's life is without any
Mm.
challenge. We have challenges. So when we meet the challenge face on without the extra soundtrack, the mind creating the doubt, the fear, the false belief, that's how we want the mind to be in operation. Not that additional stuff that the mind tends to create or that
Mm.
we create with our mind, if you may.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, with beliefs, in terms of like some of these things that may be like holding us back or kind of not serving us best, some of those thoughts of like you used some examples earlier, like I'm nothing without money, or I'm not good enough, and there are a couple of others I can't remember off the top of my head, but you used some good like beliefs that I wouldn't feel personally so empowering would sort of hold me back. We've definitely had them in my life as well, all of those things. But
Sure, sure.
yeah, like for kind of digging those out, is there anything you found useful to kind of like dig those out a little bit, or does it come back to observing a little bit?
Well, it's both. Yeah, yes. There's a method of digging it out, and then there is observing.
Mm,
So one can accustom oneself to create a little app in the back of your mind. Not a lot of energy involved, just like a small app that is observing your thoughts. Because when you do that, when you create this mindfulness app, you can actually catch yourself thinking what you're thinking.
mm,
So that's one thing. The other thing is through the suffering. Like, let's say you're really agitated at your uncle or your aunt. There's a reason that you're agitated, which is strictly in your jurisdiction and has nothing to do with them. Okay,
mm,
they may actually be acting like a total jerk, but that's not what makes you upset.
mm,
What makes you upset is something that they're causing something to be rubbed or triggered, right?
mm,
In your belief about reality. So when there's a moment of irritability, anger, unrest, jealousy, rage, what have you, it's a good opportunity to say, okay, what to sit with the feeling. Don't run from the feeling because most people run from the feeling. They don't want to feel any of that negative stuff, so they drink it away, smoke,
mm.
eat, watch Netflix,
Bone. Yeah.
phone, computer games, absolutely all of the distractions so we can externalize and not face our feelings. So facing what we're feeling is important, especially when it's like a rub, it's not feeling good. Then we look within and we ask the question, and it could be phrased in the form of a prayer, because there are many, many faculties in the higher heavens and in the non-earthly realms that are there for our assistance. So to ask for help, to pray for it is great, and to just put it out there. Okay, I'm looking for an answer to what's bothering me now. And then you sit with your feelings, and you have that little app running, and you just watch what's in the feelings and what the feeling is there. And you can ask yourself questions like, what am I feeling now? Where is this coming from? What made me mad when he or she did so and so? And
Mm,
then you can start to observe the very thing that's in operation in the subconscious mind.
mm.
And
It's very
sometimes,
yeah,
yeah,
makes a lot of sense when I've just practiced this in my own and done my own sort of various personal development on it and just tried some of this stuff. Certainly relate when there's something that's like, oh, it's made me like angry, and then you could look back later, and sometimes it could be a small thing, sometimes it's not such a small thing, but then actually I come back to it and I've dug deep, and then I'm like, okay, that actually creates that belief, but actually that leads to that belief, and that leads to that one, and that's why I've got this kind of angry or kind of almost fight or flight sort of feeling in the body. Um,
right.
yeah, just
Right, right. when you put your finger on what's really bothering you, then the phrase, the truth shall set you free, is really exemplified. Like when you're really disturbed about
Mm.
whatever, when you get to honestly realize what's happening, the the full expression and like when you express, oh, this is what I'm feeling, this, and you see it, it sets you free. And you could really see this with children. Like children they won't necessarily know what they're feeling, but if asked a multiple choice question, and when you nail it on the head of what they're feeling, like you take a stab at it, right? Are you upset because mommy had to go away for 10 minutes? Yeah. Like, and then they cry and then they're fine after. So that's so healthy to ask a child what they're feeling and to help them identify it by putting their finger on it. Then they set them, they're set free in that moment, really.
Mm.
And it's the same with us, although the activity might be a little more complex to get to it, to expose that and to put your
Mm.
finger on it.
From all these kind of things that are coming and mechanisms we've
Yeah,
put over in our life and feeling things. Yeah. Um,
yeah.
Fascinating. So just like, so I'm sort of like understanding because we're going back to our conversation again earlier, we're touching on sort of like looking at these beliefs, but then also like creating new ones. So are you saying in your experience, it's not necessarily a case of you need to create a new belief, but it's actually exposing some of those ones that are holding you back, those limiting ones?
Right, exactly. When a limiting belief is exposed, it's false.
Mm.
When it's released, nothing needs to replace it. The inherent
Mm.
okayness of our being replaces the belief. So a belief doesn't need to be replaced by another one unless you feel completely lost without some kind of a belief. And then it's just a crutch
Mm.
until one lets go to not requiring a belief, but to just spontaneously feeling inspired to be oneself without a belief about what or who one is. Right.
Mm.
So yeah, like if let's say my belief is I'm not good enough,
Mm.
well, if I let that go, what's the truth that is naturally inherent? Well, I'm okay. I'm just
Mm.
okay. I'm fine. I'm enough, right? That's not a belief. It's a fact. It's a reality. And I'm observing. I don't need to hold it in my mind as a willful object that I'm holding. You can just recognize that truth. That's very liberating, right? Because it's not your responsibility to create the truth about yourself. It's just our responsibility to allow what is to be observed as it is. And then it's a place of pure peace.
Mm.
Right? Because if you, let's say you're like, oh, I have to get that right. I am good enough.
Mm.
I am good enough. It's my will that makes it so. My belief and my thinking that makes it so. Well, then it's willful. And what if you don't feel like it, or you're tired, or you forget, or you're like, whatever, you're not very good at it? Yeah, all these things that are these pressures, and they're not required to be okay. Because inherently we are okay. That's the secret.
Mm.
That's the secret. Simple secret. And here we are talking about it out in the open. I think everybody knows this inherently that you are okay just as you are. That's what makes you okay, is who you are is what makes you okay. Anything else is false,
Mm.
a misrepresentation, a required duty or obligation or guilt, or a traumatic experience that has this resulting stamp of reality to it. And all those things are not inherently who we are. So all of those things, one by one, however, or the biggest one first, and then the next one, you just see it, look at it, and ask the question: Do I want to keep living this way? And that's a very beautiful guiding light for towards peace, health, and eventual enlightenment.
Mm,
Eventual.
coming back to the natural you that you are okay and you're here because
Yes,
yeah. With the
that's it.
with some of these though, and I love like simplicity and trying not to overcomplicate these kind of things. But with some of these like beliefs that maybe are holding us back, like I'm not lovable, or for example, or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you think? I mean, in your experience working with someone, do you think sometimes there's a longer process to remove some of these because maybe there's been so many experiences, maybe in early life or throughout
Yeah.
life, that's just backed up that for that person, and actually it takes a lot more time, or is it again just observing it and truly being with it?
That's a great question, Johnny. And the answer is yes, it can take a lifetime. It could take a very long time with
Mm,
because some people's wounding is so deep. Like I work with a lot of people and I'm
mm,
flabbergasted at the level of wounding that they've had.
mm,
So in such lifetimes, there could be other lives as well that they're heaping on the same like
mm,
trauma. That could take months, years, decades. And there's also the potential for a person to come in and they're ready for change. So it could happen right away. And anything in between is possible. It really depends on where the person is,
mm,
how deep the trauma is that accompanied the belief,
mm,
and on how unhealthy they are, how removed from their true nature they are. So the process of healing can be like one small step at a time,
mm,
or it could be leaps at a time, or it could be like boom, the whole shebang of a certain form of suffering clearing in one session.
mm,
That's also possible.
so really, yeah, vary from person to person. Yeah, completely.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
that's
no,
right.
but I like the idea for me about like removing things rather than it's like you need to add in more stuff. It's like actually that everything's okay underneath that. It's just maybe it's a little bit or maybe a bit more kind of stuff that we need to just feel into and then see it for being false,
That's right.
and we get rid of that.
Exactly.
No, I
Yeah,
love.
it's peace bringing, right? Like
Mm,
to feel okay, to feel like to know that you are enough. And
mm,
that's the ultimate truth. And there's not something to aspire, like always rushing around or aspiring or I got to get there. But actually, it's like the metaphor of the book The Alchemist, right? Like he searches for the treasure,
mm.
then he realizes all along that it's been, spoiler alert, sorry, it's been there all along, right? Like in any case, yeah, that's the metaphor is that we have it inside of us. It's there.
Got you. Yeah, no, I love that. So, Dr. Moshe, we've obviously explored the role of well, just some highlights of. We could go into this in a lot more detail, but we've explored quite a lot of the highlights of the impact of the mind on the body, and particularly around like beliefs and what these can hold in the mind that actually impacts the body as well. Just
Yep.
before we sort of like wrap up today, is there anything you want to share in terms of a final point? Maybe it's something we've said, or just reflect back. And then also, because I know you got a ton more value and resources out there, where can the
Yeah.
listener find you if they want to reach out or look at some more of your work?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So one final point is this idea of being. So being is the most fundamental state for a human being. It's funny because we're called a human being.
We're
The
doing
being
something, yeah.
is beyond definition. It's beyond the thoughts. It's beyond the emotions, but beyond the body. There's just beingness. It's pure consciousness. That is the I am. That is the I am. So any belief that is attached to the end of I am is either a perversion or a misrepresentation or conditionality. It's something false on the I am. So I am is the most true thing that one can say. I
Mm,
am. If I
okay.
say I am not, anything that follows doesn't matter. There's a statement, I am not. In other words, I am not. It's impossible, but we can believe it. So you get caught up in this like world of illusion of not non-beingness. Like I don't exist. A lot of people, when I bring them down, they have this feeling like I don't know. If I don't know who I am, like I'm not. And then whatever follows that are the details of I'm not good enough, I'm not beautiful, I'm not respectable, whatever, right? So those are just the beliefs. But the core here is like that core is the I amness, and that's pure beingness. It's beyond definition, it's beyond condition. And I feel like it would greatly serve each of us to devote oneself to the uh, realization of that.
Mm.
It's a realization. It's not nowhere you have to go. You just have to see, wow. I mean, it's operating all the time. We're just
Mm.
not aware of it. We have these veils, right?
It's right in front
So
of
that,
us.
yeah, that's right. Exactly. Always, always. It cannot not be. Like the beingness cannot not be. It always is. So that's a beautiful thing to chew on. And to contact me, there's two avenues. One is if you would like to do the training with me, I teach practitioners how to perform the V dialogue. And there's a lot of philosophy, there's a lot of transformation in the program for the practitioner. And it's called holistic counseling. And my site is holistic without a W dash, like minus sign, counseling with one L .ca, and that's the certification training. And then if you're just interested in your own personal health, I also have a site. It's Dr. minus sign Moshe Moshe.com. Dr-Moshe.com. So that's how people can get in touch with me.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, definitely recommend to you as a listener to check out one of those sites that Dr. Moshe has got available. So thank you so much for coming on today and sharing just a few golden nuggets of what you got to offer. So I appreciate you for being here.
Thank you so much, Johnny. It's my pleasure. Really, I appreciate being on with you.
Of course. So that concludes our episode for today. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.